Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server link right here in the description. You can bypass the Apple upcharge, pay $2.99 per month. This is the place for the most heat information, conversation, consternation, celebration. We handle all of it there. Go to Off the Floor. This is where you want to go. You don't need the other stuff on Twitter. You just want heat information, right? So check out Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. Also check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Legal in the state of Florida. Again, they've added back pretty much all of the old features. And you can play up to 6 players together now. You can flex play. It's all there. This is the official fantasy partner of the Five Reasons Sports Network. It's Prize Picks. Make sure for your bonus, use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. You may be listening to this prior to the Heat playing the Milwaukee Bucks at home on Saturday night. One of just 3 home games left. Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Washington, 2 road games, Chicago and New Orleans before the season is closed. The Heat will be in the play-in. We just don't know what slot they're going to be in. Losers of 10 straight, winners of 6 straight, and then a tough loss to Memphis with John Morant's game winner. Today, Greg and I are going to talk about the Jimmy Butler trade, and we're not really going to talk about Jimmy Butler. So that's a change. We're going to talk about the players that they got for Jimmy Butler. Of course, there's one acquisition that has not been made yet, which is the Golden State draft pick. We don't know where that's going to be, but it appears that the Heat will probably get it because of the way that Golden State has played since Jimmy got in there. So it looks like the Heat will get that pick this year. We just don't know what it will be. So when you look at the total context of the Jimmy Butler trade, you have to include the pick. And again, we don't know what they're going to do with that pick at this point. But they did get 3 players for Jimmy Butler: Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, and Kyle Anderson. And that's not necessarily how the trade was supposed to go in the first place, because Kyle Anderson was supposed to be moved. PJ Tucker, who was announced to go into the Heat, was never going to the Heat. They were always going to reroute him. So that was, and people talked about that, but he was never coming back to Miami. But then they were able to make the move to get Davion Mitchell, and they ended up holding on to Kyle Anderson, which at the time, we were kind of like, okay. I mean, it wasn't really their intention, but I did report at the time that there were some in the scouting department and also Eric Spoelstra who really liked Kyle Anderson's skill set and thought that he could contribute to the Heat. And he has. And so what Greg and I are going to do today is look not just at how they've played since they've come, but what it means for all 3 of them going forward. So I'll start with you, Greg, before we get to the going forward part, which we'll handle most of that in the second part of this episode. Each of these guys, have they exceeded, met, or failed to meet expectations? Andrew Wiggins to start.
Well, when he's played, he's been good. I mean, I think that statistically, you can't really argue with where he's came in. He's right around 20 points a game. He's, been relatively good on defense. I think some of the defensive chops that I was expecting maybe haven't manifested themselves, but we haven't seen enough of them, frankly. And so that's, I'd say when he's played, but that's a gigantic caveat, he's been good.
I think so too. And you mentioned the when he's played. So he's actually missed, and this is coming into tonight, he's missed 11 games.
About to be 12.
And about to be 12, right. And one of the concerns, it's been like 2 separate injuries, 3, I think, actually separate situations. And of course, one of the issues with Jimmy Butler was he didn't play enough. And so it does matter. We can't excuse it. Obviously, there are various factors that come into play here that lead to a player being out. I don't think Andrew Wiggins is trying to sit out or anything like that, but availability is an ability. And then the Heat made a big deal of it before the season. And so if you look at how much he's actually played, he would be on pace with the Heat to play like 50 something games if it was a full season that he was here. And that's kind of what Jimmy was doing that was frustrating them. So it is something to look at going forward. He's had some seasons. He used to play every game. Early in his career, you look at it, it was 82, 81, something like that. But then he had some family issues that led to some of his departures in recent years from Golden State. But then he's also had some injuries that have, and he's on the other side of 30 now, right? So this is, he's not an old player, but he's played for a very long time. He was the number 1 overall pick. He played a lot of minutes when he first came in. So I do think it matters. I would say he's met expectations in that sense. I think the defense has not been exactly what we thought. He's not been elite on that end.
Mhm.
I think that as they kind of formulate the team better and find exactly what his role is, it will improve.
Agreed.
His obviously the couple of scoring flourishes he's had, the 42-point game, the 30-point game, you saw the ability. He's not as physical as Jimmy, but he has a variety of ways to get to the basket. We've seen that. There's a mid-range game there. I wish the three-pointer had a little more arc on it because it looks like it's never going in. But again, he's a capable three-point shooter when he needs to be. He's not a classic spacer. So I think as far as he's played, I would say met expectations, but needs to play more, obviously, and that's kind of where he's at. And then we'll talk about his future later on. All right, Davion Mitchell exceeded expectations,
Exceeded.
met expectations. Yes,
Let's just
right.
jump out in front of it. Exceeded expectations to get basically 10 points and 5 assists and heavy minutes out of a guy that was opportunistically added to the deal. And Spoelstra, said, let's get him in Miami. He's exceeded every expectation. I liked him. I liked the pickup. And I think every Heat fan thought that the idea of Davion Mitchell and what he brought and off night and all of that was in theory going to be great. And it's actually been better than we expected. And so even the most optimistic Heat fans, I think, are surprised that Davion has played this well, and Spoelstra trusts him a ton. And I think that is something that we shouldn't take lightly, that he basically parachuted into the arena in the middle of the season and immediately started playing in excess of 35 minutes. So I think that that's big, and he's a keeper.
And the best thing he's done is the guy who was not playing well, his emergence has allowed Spoelstra to finally give up the ghost on that one, on the Terry Rozier experiment. He's been tremendous. Look, the biggest compliment you can give a guy if you follow this organization for a while is he's a Heat player, and he just is absolutely a Heat player. It's just his energy. He just changes the energy of the game when he comes in. It's why I kind of like him off the bench, especially if he's going to play these heavy minutes. But the couple of things that surprised me from a positive aspect. One is he's much craftier as a playmaker than I thought. The shooting, he's had some stretches over the course of his career where he's been an okay shooter, others where he hasn't been. But his ability to get a foot in the paint and then find guys, make plays, I didn't really know he had that. And so that's been really positive. The defense, obviously. I mean, the guy will not he you cannot screen him. You just can't. And he's gonna blow up everything, and he's gonna blow up your offense, and he's been tremendous in that area. But the other thing that has really impressed me is his willingness to take big shots. That is, to have a guy who's willing to do that
No fear.
is such a big thing. It just is. And look, I don't think this is ever going to be a guy who's going to be a 16-8 player or anything along those lines, but he's a winning player. Like, when this team is good again, and we'll talk about this on the other side of the episode, he should be part of it. And he will be contributing to it. And there will be times that even if he's not a starter, fans will be like, when are you getting Davion in? And I think when you have that kind of player, it was a tremendous pickup by then. He's a great fit. They got lucky in the sense that Toronto had a couple guards like him, and so they made him available. But it's a terrific pickup. It really is, and he's been great in every way. He brings some energy to the locker room too. He's got some personality. He's just a very good fit with everything they do. All right, Kyle Anderson, exceeded, met, or not met?
I would say he's exceeded expectations because I kind of, even though I knew that there were people within the organization that were fond of his game, I thought just by the numbers of the rotation and the roster that he probably wouldn't get a ton of look. And the minutes that he's gotten, he's played well. There's been some really bright spots. Obviously, you can't expect like him. I don't necessarily know if he's a rotation player all season on a contender.
Mm, mhm.
More of like a guy who can give you rotation level production for stretches of a season. And at 6% of the salary cap, where he's around 9 million, 8 to 9 million, 6% of the cap, I think that it's a sound way of spending the money there. For lack of a better term, like I think that it's not as egregious of a contract to take into your future cap space and to so I think he's exceeded my expectations because I just didn't know that he'd get a big shot. And when he's played, he's been pretty damn good.
I think he's exceeded expectations in large part because of the Jovic injury. Because I think if not for that, I don't think he gets
It's a good
quite
point.
this opportunity. I would say he's met my expectations because I kind of knew he was this player. Like if you've watched him over time, um, he provides this. And it's funny because he was really bad in his first appearance with the Heat, and so everybody was like, but again, once he settles down, and he does settle down, slow mo, and you can see the way he reads the game. And this has been a team that, let's just acknowledge, has not shown the highest IQ this year on the court. This is not the highest IQ Heat team this year that we've ever seen, and that contributed to a lot of turnovers, mistakes, lack of resilience late in games, that kind of stuff. He settles them like again, he ain't Jimmy, okay, but they needed a guy who slow the game down, and again, that's his nickname, and just make the right read, make the right play. And he does that. And we're going to talk again on the other side about what you do with him going forward. But he's been very important for them. They finding this bench core of Davion, Haywood, and Kyle Anderson was critical to the 6-game winning streak. And he's also the kind of player who he's aging well because he doesn't do anything athletic.
Yeah, he wasn't
he's
dunking over
31 now.
people before. Yeah.
No, he's 31. He had one season where he's averaged double digits, which was in Memphis when he was 27. He started 69 games. He averaged 12.4 points. Essentially, though, if you look at his per minute averages, they've been the same his whole career. He is what he is. His per 36 numbers for his career: 11.5 points, 7.2 rebounds, 4.6 assists. This year in Miami, 13.8 points, 6.7 rebounds, 4.8 assists. He's been the same player. You go up and down his numbers from 2014 in San Antonio, his time in Memphis, time in Minnesota, time in Golden State. They liked him in Golden State. And then with Miami, he's been exactly the same player. So I think just the consistency, knowing what you're going to get, is why I say he's met expectations. This is who he is. I just think he's exceeded expectations because the Jovic injury has given him a place to do this. All right, on the other side, we'll talk about the futures of all three of these. Before we do, want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's Water Cleanup of Florida. You can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. Your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop. Michael, Robert, their entire team. More than 200 5-star reviews on Google now. More than 200 5-star reviews on Google. They service Boca Raton all the way down the East Coast, all the way down to Miami, the Keys, but also the rest of the state. So check them out. Again, these are honest contractors. They can't do the job. They will let you know. WCUFL.com. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you've got the schmutz,
They got the guts.
All right, so let's talk about the futures of all three of these. Two of them are signed beyond this season. Okay, so essentially, when you're looking at the Heat's cap sheet for next year, Andrew Wiggins is scheduled to make $28.2 million. Kyle Anderson is scheduled to make $9.2 million. Davion Mitchell is to be determined because he is a restricted free agent, which means that the Heat can match any offer for him.
And his
Then
qualifying offer is 8.7 million, just so that
8.7 million. Now, if you look beyond that, to the 26-27 season, which of course is beyond this sort of vaunted free agent class of 26. If you look beyond that, there's no Kyle Anderson at that point. Obviously, Davion not signed to this point. Oh, I'm sorry, there is Kyle Anderson, right? Or no?
Yes, there is.
Oh, he is. Yes, there is 9.6. Okay, 9.6 million. My bad. Uh, and then Wiggins is at 30.1. Okay. Let's start with Wiggins. From what you've seen so far, we don't know what the construction of the team is going to be because we don't know how many picks they're going to have. We don't know who they're going to go after in free agency or trade or whatever. But do you think it's more likely that Andrew Wiggins is a long-term piece, or at least to the end of his contract, or which again we have him 2 more seasons in Miami after this, or is that 30 million, 28 million, and then 30 million more likely to be used to execute a bigger trade? It feels like these are the 2 options here.
You're right. And I think Heat fans hope that it's the latter, that it's like executing the trade. And I would remain optimistic that they're going to be looking for that trade. And it would make sense that Wiggins likely, because it's in the relative terms of what we're discussing, it's a short-term deal, but it's a movable contract that takes up enough salary where if you're taking on a player that is of the ilk that makes any kind of money, you need to match salary. And I think that Wiggins just naturally at $29-30 million, like that's the kind of tradable contract. I would say he's probably more likely to be dealt, but that's me really hoping that something pops up here in the near future. I think though this is kind of an interesting way to put it. I think that for next season, he's more likely to be here, but then beyond that, they may look for a deal of some kind. But I do kind of get the sense that the Heat would like to give the Wiggins hero Bam and whatever else they can maybe put around that. They would like to maybe give that an off season and a full training camp to see, not necessarily that it's any kind of big 3, but that Wiggins can fit here. Obviously he has to play, but I mean, there could be stuff that materializes at the draft. There's a lot of talk about Kevin Durant is like basically already, dotting the I's and crossing the T's to get out of Phoenix. And then Wiggins would absolutely be the tradable contract in that scenario. So the caveat here is if Durant signals Miami and somehow that comes together, Wiggins is going to be part of that deal. But if that doesn't happen, I think it's more likely Wiggins probably sticks around over the summer.
I agree with you. It reminds me a little of the Luol Deng situation, where Lou's first year was a little choppy with Miami after he came in for LeBron, just like Wiggins for Butler, and then had a really strong second season and then was gone. I made this comparison between the 2 of them a lot, and I think that we could see something similar there. I guess the question would be if he's on the books for 26-27, is that a good thing? And I think that's a debate we're going to have a lot going forward. That
Exactly.
is he worth 30 million? The cap's going to go up, so it's going to be a smaller percentage of the cap, but he'll be closer to 32 at that stage. So is he going to be worth that kind of money? It's not the same debate we were having whether Jimmy was going to be worth 58 million or something, 61 million or whatever. But
exactly.
So it's half. It's like, okay, this is manageable, but is this how you want to be investing your resources at that point? That's a debate we're going to have. All right, let's handle Kyle Anderson next because Davion I feel is the most complicated here. Kyle Anderson, like you said, is on the books for 2 more years. It's not a lot of money.
No,
It's not a lot of money. His contract could be thrown into a deal to make something happen.
exactly.
He's also not a player they have to keep, right? I don't know.
But
Do you think he has a future in Miami? I mean, does it depend on Jovic maybe? Because I feel like that's the other thing here. We don't know if they're going to extend Nico. And if you're not going to do that, then Kyle Anderson is like a good insurance policy, I would think, for that particular role, right? Or some pieces of that role.
This is a good thing for Miami in that whether he stays or he goes, there's absolute functional ways that he can help, because throughout a season, like let's just say he's here next season, he can plug and play. And when you have injuries, to have a veteran that you don't have to necessarily teach concepts to, or have to drill things in. He knows what he's, like you said, he's been the same player everywhere he's been. I think that adds value for them getting through a regular season where guys inevitably don't play for large stretches. Also, Nico, I mean, he is up for his extension eligible coming up here soon, and they're going to have to make a decision there. If they decide that for some reason he's, commanding a salary they don't want to pay, or whatever the case may be, at least having that insurance is good. But here's the thing, Ethan, that we just have to remember, that even if it's not the megastar deal that that Heat fans are looking for the Heat to execute, this is such a tradable contract because it's like under $10 million. It's less than a mid-level salary, meaning it's less than the average salary throughout the league. Those just so easily can get thrown into deals to connect the dots and make a deal work, that I just don't want to overstate how much he'll be here, because I think he could easily get thrown in a deal and the Heat don't feel like that's, oh gosh, we're losing Kyle Anderson. So to me, this is really touch and go with how much they can use him, but do they need him is, I guess, the question.
I think, and that's why they were okay taking the contract, because everybody's like, oh, he's got money that goes beyond, and that's why I should have known immediately, but I don't know why I asked that question. He's got money beyond 2016, 2026. Yes, he does, but it's negligible. I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things. And like you said, if they needed to move the contract, they could. I do think he's a guy that they probably will keep around for next year. I think it's always good to have functional vets.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And this is no disrespect to Kevin at this point, who plays a big role behind the scenes, or to UD in the last 2 or 3 years. But when you have a vet who's been there, kind of done that, played with a bunch of different styles, different teams, blends in, but also contributes, that's helpful. And like you said, he's used to, at this stage, not playing for a while and then being pushed into action. And Spo likes those guys. So we kind of thought he'd fall in love with all three of these. And that's, he had some influence in all of this. So it makes some sense. All right, let's get to Davion. As you mentioned, this is a qualifying offer. You would expect them to extend that, right?
For sure, because that's how they're able to match any contract. So they would still control, their own destiny in terms of if they want to keep him or not.
Okay. Do you think that he'd get a big offer?
I don't. I think some fans have started to, like, I've heard a couple people say, and I don't necessarily know that I love this fit because I feel like they have too many guards already. But like, what if the Orlando Magic want to offer him a deal? Or I don't know what other teams are out there. But with his brief stint in Miami, it's going to have some people thinking, whoa, is there more in the Davion Mitchell experience than maybe we thought there was? But this is the part about it, Ethan, that I think is going to come into the Heat's advantage. There's also around the league a widespread assumption that there's black magic taking place in Miami, Florida, and that they're not going to necessarily offer a full mid-level contract or anything above the mid-level for a player that maybe is being maximized by Eric Spoelstra in the Miami Heat, because we've seen this situation before. So maybe that'll work to the Heat's advantage. I think the Heat actually will probably give him a pretty respectable offer right out of the gate to try to get something done. That's just my feel on this right now, is that I expect them to come to terms pretty quickly. I know I'm really putting the cart before the horse because we're not even close to the offseason, but that's just the vibe that I get. That they value him enough to make him a fair offer, but I don't think it'll be as high as the mid-level exception or anything like that. They're going to try to keep it, maybe reward him with some stability in maybe a 3-year deal, for instance, but not having it be as high per year as it could if it were a shorter term deal.
Yeah, I can see that. Now I never get too far ahead of myself with, with guys saying that they want to be in Miami, because a lot of guys have said that and then they're not in Miami the next year. Caleb said that. DeLon Wright said that recently. Others have said that. He does seem to want to be in Miami. So we'll start with that, but that's not definitive. It doesn't seem like starting to, we asked him when we had him on the podcast if starting mattered to him, and it doesn't seem like it does that much. And he's fit into this other role. I think minutes matter to him, and he's getting minutes. So I think you're in good shape there. the Black Magic thing is definitely a thing, and it's extended again this year because Caleb hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
So now we're going back to, I mean, how many of these is really Max
Max is the only one who beat the
only one,
allegations.
right? Like, and he's and I know we're all fans of Max, and I thought he'd be a good fit there, and that team has played really well, and he's contributed. Now he wasn't healthy actually when they got off to their really fast start in the first 25 games of this season, but he's a key piece there now, and so yeah, I mean, but I think Max is the type that I just think was going to fit anywhere because of just the way he plays. But 90% of these guys after they leave Miami do not perform at the level that they perform in Miami. And I have a hard time believing any other team is going to look at Davion Mitchell, who's really been out there for anybody past couple. I mean, he was a first round pick, but
Yeah.
is going to look at Davion Mitchell and say, okay, that's going to be our starting point guard, is going to give us 15 and 8. I don't see it. I think honestly, they're going to look at it and say he's in the perfect role where he is, and that I don't know the teams will really extend an offer because I think they would expect the Heat to match.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's going to scare some teams off too. So I would be surprised if he's not back. I think I'd actually be surprised now that we've talked about it if any of these three are not back. I think all three are going to be back.
Agree.
I do.
Just if the Durant thing pops at the draft.
Yeah.
And just to keep everything in perspective from a cap sheet timing kind of thing, the league year would still be this league year if a trade happens on draft night. If they were to finalize the deal and execute it and announce it, but they also could agree to deals on draft night and then not execute it until the new league year starts. So these salaries we've talked about for all these players, Davion Mitchell excluded, would change slightly depending on what league year we're working in. But unless at the draft, Kevin Durant somehow like signals Miami and they're able to come to an agreement where Phoenix is not like asking for an insane amount of some sort of crazy mega offer, because I just don't think Durant should command that at this point. But if they come to a fair agreement and the Heat think that they can fast track this thing and try the Durant experiment with Bam, and I know Bam and Durant have wanted to play together before. Katie loves Bam. That may be the only way, Ethan, that this gets like thrown off and you don't see guys like Kyle Anderson or Wiggins back. Davion, I think, will be back. But to your point, it's probably less likely that's going to happen. They're going to continue to build with these guys. So I do kind of expect them all back. And frankly, to say that the Heat would get three, quote unquote, whether it's short term or not, keepers out of the Jimmy Butler deal is not the worst way to go about this, because there's been other times that they've made trades with their stars and it hasn't resulted in all their guys being back.
And they still have the pick. They still have the pick. So we'll see what they end up doing with the pick. But that you say you got three guys you can play right now, different stages of their career. Davion being the youngest, Wiggins being mid prime, and then you're looking at Kyle Anderson being post prime, but his prime has been the same the entire time. So and then you add the younger piece. So you've kind of added pieces at four different stages of their careers. I think that, look, if Jimmy wins a championship in Golden State, obviously we know what the national media is going to do. The Heat handed the Warriors a championship. We get it. Okay. And I obviously it was not tenable for them to continue with this. The Heat just have to be evaluated at this point based on what they end up getting. Not what Jimmy ends up doing. Okay. Because Jimmy wasn't going to do that for them anymore. So that's kind of not in this situation, not in this role, not with all this tension, not with all that. So far, they've gotten production, okay, and they have the potential to get more production. And I think we're going to end up looking back at this trade as probably under the circumstances, maybe an A minus because of everything they were dealing with. But in terms of actual trade, if it ends up being a solid B, I think you take it and you're like, okay, that ended up being just fine, because this could have been a lot worse. Okay, and some of those other offers that we were talking about or potential bringing in Bobby Portis and this guy from Milwaukee or Chris Middleton or whatever, they ended up doing better, I think, than our worst fears about what was going to happen. All right, check us out tonight, post-game show. Greg and Gio will be on post-game, myself and Brady I'll be at the game. Alex is getting a well-deserved night off. We'll be back with me on a podcast tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.